Hi everyone, in this video I will be showing you the update of Action Commander 1.5.0. As you can see that here I loaded the changelog of the Action 1.5. I added quite a lot of features here, so it's a pretty big update here. So I hope you will like the changes in Action Commander 1.5. If you want to check the changelog, you can go to docs.tinkerBoi.com/actioncommander v1.5/changelog.html, and from here you can check out the changelog of the Action Commander 1.5. Loading new action now creates the action in the next item of the current active action instead of at the bottoms. This way it's probably much more easier for you to create your animation without moving to the bottom and move them back up. So for example, if I create a new action here, so let's just call it stand for, and I click OK, you can see that it is now the next item instead of at the bottom. If you want to use the old behavior, you can just go to the preferences, Action Commander, and you can just turn on create new action slot at bottom of list legacy. So this is how it used to works. So if I turn that on and if I click create a new action now, so let's say stand 5, and if I click OK, you can see that now it is at the bottom. So you can choose which one you want. By default, it is going to use the next action below the active action. In the add action option, you have two new options here. You have the is loop and you have clear pose transform. So if I turn it on by default, it is going to clear the pose transform of the armature. If I turn clear pose transform off and I click OK, you can see that the pose doesn't change and it doesn't go to rest pose. And you might have noticed there's a is loop option, so let's explore that. The add-on now added a is loop option in the properties. So if I go to the action properties here, you can see that the is loop is available for you. What this does is basically very simple. All it does is if you switch to the action, it is going to subtract one frame for you so that your animation can look properly. You can see that is loop is turned on, and you can see that this is the last keyframe and it is on frame 19. Frame 19 is the last frame. If I turn this off and I click the action again, you can see that it is now using the full animation. Now, aside from the clear pose transform in the add action operator, you can also make it to clear transform when you switch the animation, and you can enable this option in the preferences under clear pose on action switch. So if I click this, it is going to ensure to clear pose whenever you switch action. So let's say I have a new action that is empty, so it doesn't have any keyframe in it. Now if I go to the other pose and I come back here, you can see that it is going back to the rest pose. If I turn this off and I switch the action again, you can see that it does not go back to the rest pose. This might be useful if you have unkeyed bones in your action and they might end up retain their pose. So if you turn this on, it is going to clear pose every time you change your action. Another new feature that I added is the ability to flip action. So you have this butterfly icon, which is the mirror icon. So let's see. I have this action that he look at left and I look at right. Now, if I click this and I mirror the action, so let's say stand 4 or maybe stand 3, and I click OK, you can see that the animation is flipped. So right now it is looking at the other direction. So left, right, and stand 3 is right, left. So this might be useful if you want to make a variation of left side to right side to left side. But there's a few caveats when doing this because it is going to flip everything. So let's say if I go to the attack animation, let's say this animation, if I flip, it is probably not going to work directly and you probably need some adjustment. The reason being because it is going to flip the foot as well. So if I flip this and I call this attack 4 and I click OK, you can see that it kind of works but not really. And if I change the animation, you can see that the foot position change. And the blade doesn't follow because the blade is parented to this arm instead of that arm, so it is not going to work perfectly. So some adjustment are still needed, but you can see that most of the poses are still there. So if I want to fix this, I could just come here. For a simple animation like this where the foot doesn't move, it's probably fine. So I'm just going to copy this keyframe, go to attack 4, and I'm just going to paste this keyframe, set keyframe, and delete the rest of the keyframe. And I'm just going to duplicate this keyframe from start to end as well. Now the foot position is at the same position now. Now if I want to fix the hand, I can just do some manual keyframing. So I'm just going to adjust the pose. Because the animation is inherently different, pose of striking to the left side to the right side to the left side is definitely going to be different. So I'm just going to adjust this animation. So if you have something that is totally symmetrical or your movement is totally symmetrical, this might work very well. But this is not magic, so it might not work perfectly every time. And so this is something. It's not perfect, but it kind of works. Next, we have edit selected text, which is this button over here. So to do that, I need to select some action. So let me just select all the stand animation, and I can edit selected tag, and I can add a new tag to them. So let's say I call this idle. So now all of them have a text of idle. And let's select all the attack animation, and I'm going to edit tag. Let's call them offense. Animation that is tagged under idle and animation tag under offense. And now I can just use the tag regularly. In the text here, I have a few updates. So if I click the tag, it is going to add or remove the tag from the filter. If I shift click this, it is going to select the animation with this tag. So if I shift click offense, it is going to select it. If I out click it, it is going to deselect them. And if I control click it, it is going to solo select them. So it is going to deselect the other action and select the action with only these tags. Now I also have a select all and deselect all if you need to clean up your selection setting. Now in Action Commander, you can set icons for each action. So if I shift click this icon, and I can choose an icon that I want. So I can use this icon color, can decorate them and make them more visible to know which is which. But setting it one by one is taking a while. So what I can do is I can select all this, and I added a new feature called set icon for selected action, which is here. If I select this, I can select the icon that I want. So let's choose red. Now they are now red. I can select all this stand animation. So I'm just going to deselect all, and I'm going to select the stand animation. And I'm going to set this again. I'm going to set this as blue. So I can see that there's the offense animation that is under red. There's a stand animation that is under blue. And maybe I can set this as green. Now, once we set this icon, we actually can filter by the icon if I want to. So if I expand this filter area, I can filter by icon. I can choose the icon that is within this list. So I can choose the red color, I can choose the blue color. So I can filter them. I can even invert them if I want. All this filter option is also now available in Action Bin. So if I go to Action Bin and I go to the filter, you can see that the same filter is appear over here. So you can use them as well. The next feature that I added is Unset Action. So if I want to unset action, so if I don't want this armature to have any action for now, I can just come here and unset action. And if I want, I can clear pose. So if I clear pose, click OK. Now the action has been unset. There's no action assigned to this animation. So this is useful if my character has no action here and it has load active action and I just want to unassign it. I can just click it here. This is unset action as well. So it is going to unset the action if I want to. Another features that I added is the ability to delete selected action. So let's say I don't want 2, 3, 4, and I can just click delete selected action. And if I want, I can remove the action from this brand file as well. I'm just going to take this, click OK. Now the action is no longer exists in this file. If I delete selected action without that, well, it is still going to retain in this file. So it is still going to be in the action bin, but it is no longer in the list here. Another quality of life feature that I added is that you can see that if you move this item, it is moved by 1. But if you shift click, it is just going to move it to the top. So I can click this and move it to the top if I want. So this can be useful if you want to quickly move some of the item to the top or bottom. So I can move it to bottom as well. Aside from using this button to go from bottom to top, I can also use another operator that is called move selected to active. So let's say I select all this action and I want to move it below stand 2. So I select the action that I want to move and I set the active action I want and I use move selected to active and I can choose if I want it to be below or above. So let's choose below and click OK. You can see that all the active animation is now below the stand animation. Next, a new option I added to the action properties is bake range. So I can turn on bake range and I can set a frame range different from the action frame range that I want to bake. So for example, let's say I just want from frame 0 to frame 10. So I can turn on frame bake, set this to frame 10 and I can just bake. So let me just turn on the bake this. And if I bake this, if I click OK, now the new bake action is only 10 frames. I can set this to like 10 to 20 and I can bake again. And you can see that the action is now 10 to 20. This also works if I want to bake multiple actions. Let's set everything to 10 to 20. This one 10 to 20. This one 10 to 20. And for this to be different, let's just set something else. 0 to 20 for example. So let's try and bake it all. Bake selected action. And if I click OK, it is going to bake the action. And you can see 10 to 20, 10 to 20, 10 to 20, and 0 to 20. So this way you can set the bake range if you want. If I turn this off, let me just remove this, and if I turn it off, and I bake again, this time it is just going to bake the whole thing. This baking also works with each loop. So for example, this stand animation, if I want to bake this, if I click OK and I bake this, you can see that each loop is turned on and it baked to 0 to 19. If I go back to the original, you can see that this is 0 to 20. And because of the each loop, it's set to 90. And if you notice it, now this menu is a proper menu instead of an operator that pops up the option for you. So this is a request by some of the customer, and now it looks a bit nicer. And remove actions by condition has a few more options. You now have tags, so you can remove by tag. So if I set this to, let's say, idle, you can see that it now listed the idle. If I set this to offense, this is going to delete all the actions with these tags. And another option is select. It can also delete selected action as well. Here I have a model, I have a control rig, and in this case, I also have a game rig, or some people call it a shadow rig, which is just a deformed bone that is constrained to the control rig. So to do that, I need to go to shadow rig option. To enable this, you need to go to preferences, action commander, and you need to turn on enable shadow rig because it is turned off by default. So if you turn it on, then you have the access to the shadow rig. And here I can select my shadow rig. Here I'm just going to choose my shadow rig, and it is automatically going to go to the shadow rig and assign the control rig. So if you want it to work the other way around, that works as well. I can select the shadow rig, and I can choose control rig, and it is going to set this up. Here I have a few options. I can connect and disconnect the rig. So this is disconnected, and I can connect it back if I want to. I can also click this button to go to the control rig or shadow rig, so I can toggle my selection between them. And notice that there's a few different buttons here. So what I can do is I can bake to shadow rig. So right now the shadow rig has no action. So if you notice, I can bake to shadow rig. So let's try that. But first of all, I need to select my action. So if I want to select, I can just select all, or I can just come here and there is a select all action button here so that I can select all the action. And I can bake shadow rig. Here I'm going to use the default setting. I can choose, I think I'm going to use suffix instead because it looks nicer. I'm going to click OK, and it is going to bake the animation. So now you can see that the animation has been baked into the deformed armature. At the same time, it is also loaded as an action. Now this is one option that you can use, but Action Commander added some new features that you can use here. Now if you want to use the bake shadow rig workflow, that works as well. But if you notice, there's another button called bake and export shadow rig. So what this does is going to bake before you export so that you don't have to manually bake them. The add-on is going to bake the animation and then export the animation and then remove the bake animation. So let's try this feature. So I have all this animation, and let's try and export them. So I'm going to bake and export, and I can choose which animation I want to export. So I'm going to choose stand, look left, look right. Let's not export attack. And I can choose if I want to export as a single FBX file or multiple file. So let's demonstrate single FBX file, and let's go and check some settings. So here, if I want to export mesh, I can choose I don't want to export any mesh. I can export selected mesh, or I can let the add-on automatically find a mesh. So how this does is basically look through all the objects in the scene and find that if the mesh object have an armature modifier that points to this rig. So now I have selected auto find mesh, and let's try and export it. I'm going to export it. Now I have already exported my animation, and let's go and see the file. Import FBX animation. And here I have imported the FBX. So if I go to my Action Commander and I'm going to load them, you can see that the animation has been loaded. Now back to this file. Let's explore the other option. I have multiple FBX file, and let's try that. I'm going to delete this. And this time, let's add attack right, and then let's export. Now let's go and open the file. And you can see that the animation has been exported as a multiple FBX file. So let's try and open it one by one. So this is the attack animation. Let's go and Action Commander and see only one animation. And if I want, I can use the action commander's import FBX to only import the action. So I can use file name as action name, import them. So now this is working properly now. So I hope you like the add-on, and I hope this add-on will speed up your workflow and improve your game animation workflow.